For several centuries, Moscow has been trying to reject its own roots. Tsars and dictators from the Kremlin have hysterically tried to associate themselves with Kievan Rus and the Slavic heritage, although original Russia is about as Slavic as the Chinese are. For some reason, Moscow is destroying its own identity and is ashamed of its origins.
I am a Lak, I am a Dagestani, I am a Chechen, an Ingush, a Russian, a Tatar, a Jew, a Mordvin, and an Ossetian.
Historically, Russia has been inhabited by Finno-Ugric peoples, Ersia, Moksha, Komi, Udmurts, Mariel, and all of them are in danger because the deranged Kremlin has decided to erase its own people and create a Frankenstein called Great Russia.
I am Russian!
The Slavs only came to the historical Russian lands in the 12th century, and in fact are occupiers. The subjugated peoples were forcibly baptized and called Russians, but that didn't actually make them Russian.
My name is Alexei, call sign Rick. I am a representative of the Erzya people. Today, I am defending the freedom and independence of Ukraine from Russian aggression. Because of my profession, my speech will be brief and concise. My goal at this Congress is to call on all representatives of Finno-Ugric peoples to fight against Putin's dictatorial regime.
By the way, the Erzya have a serious conflict with the Russian Orthodox Church because the Erzya intelligentsia is massively rejecting Orthodoxy and returning to the traditional Erzya faith. Naturally, the FSB agents in Kazakhs are fuming over this. We often call Russians Mokshans, but by doing so we insult the Mokshans, because they are a separate people who have been under Moscow's occupation for centuries. Although the name Moscow itself is Finno-Ugric and means dark water. You couldn't describe this place any better.
We use a bucket as a toilet and then pour it out into the street.
The largest Finno-Ugric republic is indeed Mordovia, a significant region. There are even 3 official languages there: Erzya, Moksha, and Russian. Guess which 2 of them are endangered? In fact, the scale of the genocide would have surprised even Hitler. According to the 2002 census, 614,000 people identified themselves as speakers of Finno-Ugric languages. But by 2010, that number had dropped to 393,000. So, in less than 10 years, almost half of the indigenous population disappeared somewhere. They were all turned into this.
What is the actual name of this vast, powerful, and historically significant? It is Russia! Oh my God, please!
The Mordvins are an ancient people. They were mentioned in the 6th century by the Gothic historian Jordanes. At that time, the Mordvins were fighting with Germanic tribes, and by the 7th century, the Erzya were already part of the Khazar Khaganate. Where were the great Russians at that time? That's right, up in the trees, gnawing on pine cones.
Answering the question of what you can eat in the forest, I can give a very simple answer indeed. You can observe other animals that live in the forest and see what they eat. And generally speaking, it's quite possible that this will be suitable for humans as well. Well, for example, take a look at this. This is a corn, a spruce corn.
In the Middle Ages, the Moksha and the Erzya people were constantly at war with the Slavs, and quite successfully. And the national hero of the Erzya, Prince Pergas, died resisting the Mongol invasion. Unlike the Russian national hero Alexander Nevsky, who swore allegiance to the invaders, became a collaborator and started collecting tribute for the Mongols from his own people. Feel the difference, as they say.
Now, the popular Nevskoye beer comes in a brand new, truly original bottle.
Currently, the national liberation movement of the Erzya is gaining strength in Russia. For them, it is a matter of the survival of their people, the preservation of their language and culture, because the Kremlin's machinery literally leaves nothing alive.
A lot has been said about the problems of the suppression of our languages, cultures, histories, and so on. We need to show our firm will and fight for our values, not just with words, but with actions. That's why I call on those who are able to fight with weapons in hand to join the armed forces of Ukraine. For those who, for certain reasons, cannot bear arms, there are plenty of other ways to fight.
The struggle of the Erzya people for independence began back in the 19th century. Even then, they were demanding the realization of their national rights. Finnish and Estonian ethnographers played a significant role in their self-determination, as they thoroughly documented the everyday life, traditions and language of the Erzya. These people quite literally began to rise from oblivion. At the close of the 19th century, the notable encyclopedist Makar Yevseyev successfully created the very first primers specifically designed for the Moksha and Erzya peoples. Concurrently, during this significant historical period, the Erzya intelligentsia began to distinctly take shape. During the collapse of the empire in 1917, the Erzya finally decided that they had no future with Moscow.
I am Bulai, elder of the Erzya people, member of the League of Free Nations, and a veteran of the Russo-Ukrainian War. For centuries, my people have survived under colonization, fighting for our right to exist, to live on the land of our ancestors according to our own customs, and to speak our native language.
Just like other subjugated peoples.
At first, the Bolsheviks courted the peoples to gain their support. But as soon as they seized power, they declared war on all national movements. During the Great Terror, almost all figures of the Erzya revival were destroyed. And only at the end of the 80s, when the second collapse of the pseudo-empire loomed, did the Erzya once again openly resume the struggle for independence.
Go ahead.
The Erzya Moksha public movement Mastarava was created. They demanded that the leadership of the Moldovan Republic recognize the rights of the peoples inhabiting the Moldovan Republic. The primary demand was to abolish the pseudo-ethnonym Mordva and replace it with Morvin, Erzya and Moksha, to rename Mordovia itself to Mastarava, and to make the Erzya and Moksha languages officially recognized. And importantly, to stop the influx of deported and convicted people into the Republic, because Moscow had turned Mordovia into one big penal colony.
This train runs on a special prison branch line. Up ahead are the famous Moldovan prison camps for every taste. There are general, strict, special regimes, a section for life sentences, colonies for drug addicts, foreigners and former police officers.
The Erzya continued their struggle even in modern Russia. In 1993, the Movement for Equality and Development of Erzya Mastor was founded, which translates as the Land of the Erzya. Their goal is to create a separate Erzya Republic, because the Kremlin's manual control over Mordovia simply refuses to acknowledge the existence of these people.
It's been important to me since the 1990s to be involved with the Erzya issue. I was probing the Erzya question, the outlines of the Erzya, as it were, essence, which was somehow hidden, shrouded in a kind of veil. It seemed to exist, and at the same time, it seemed not to. If you don't want to notice it, you can easily live in the world of, say, Gazmanov and Olaf Pugachev.
Exactly the same as with the Ukrainians, we supposedly don't exist either. Ukrainians, Erzyans, Kalmyks, Chukchi, Tatar Russians.
These lands were simply part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and then they asked to join the Moscow Tsardom. That's all there is to it.
The Erzyans and Mokshans are among the most discriminated peoples in Russia's so-called Federation. According to the chief elder of the Erzyan people, over the past 30 years, the Erzyans have gone from being a million-strong nation to a small ethnic group on the verge of complete extinction. The Moksha, Udmurts, Mari, Chuvash, Bashkirs and Tatars have found themselves in a similar situation. The peoples of Russia are forbidden from having their own political parties, universities, or even studying in schools in their native language. All that's left are dances in national costumes and jokes about how everyone else is stupid while Russians are the best. Today, Mordovia is a depressed region where 1 in 5 people lives below the poverty line.
We quickly found Mordovia among the 20 regions with the lowest income levels. Of course, this is not at all surprising for those who live in this area.
You can compare how the independent Finland, which is related to the Erzya people, lives. Here is Finland, and here is Mordovia.
What the H?
Despite the severe repression and immense pressure from the Moscow authorities, the national liberation movement of the Ersia people cannot be crushed, and the pseudo-empire will inevitably collapse for the third time in its history. Today, many Erzia and Moksha are fighting on the side of Ukraine against the Moscow occupiers. So please do not ever call Russians Moksha. Russians are truly like monstrous, savage orcs and ravenous, bloodthirsty cannibals.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.